also, but we don't prefer so much in our syllabus actually. So
okay, fine. Anybody else who uses case study method? There are some names here who has used this. Dr. Yogita Parihar. Dr. Yogita. Prashant, just ask Dr. Yogita to join in. Dr. Yogita Parihar. Prashant, are you doing it?
Yes, sir. Done.
Dr. Yogita, can you come online, please? And 2 participants have raised their hands. Just see, Prashant, who are they? Those who have raised the hand. Prashant?
We have done, sir. They can unmute yourself. Shefali.
Yes, Shefali, come in, please. Can you come in?
Yes, sir. Sir, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes.
How have you
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear. How have you used case study method?
Yes, sir. Yeah, sir. Yes, sir. So my area is human resource management.
Okay.
And I often case study my students. So it could be some real life. Most of the times it's real life case study, which we pick up from internet or from some good books, or it could be a hypothetical case that we get in the books. So we give them I give them in the classroom. First I ask them to read it thoroughly. Then I form groups, and then I give them questions, and then I ask them to discuss it amongst themselves, and I ask them to try to relate with the theory on cases based theoretical aspects, and then with the practical solutions on the basis of the facts given in the case. And also I ask them to relate it with theory. So there could be some questions towards the end of the, so ask them to answer the questions.
All
Otherwise,
right.
general analysis of the
very fine,
case.
very fine, Dr. Shefali. Now, one thing is clear: you give it in advance.
Thank you, sir.
And then you discuss. Now, we have Dr. Nidhi Arora, who has raised her hand.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Yes, Dr. Nidhi, tell us. What
Yes,
do you do in your case study method?
Yes, sir. So there are 2 ways. Actually, I applied in my classes. First one, as ma'am said, that we'll give a case study. And then for the competency mapping, yes, we did it. We got it from some company, also the real case. And we had discussed in the class, and we had drawn all the competencies and indicators and cases, carries. And it was a wonderful session that everybody enjoyed it. The another one, with the best one, which I liked, actually, you must have heard about Metro Man. So that sir's lecture for 1 hour, you won't believe it, sir. That lecture we had played in the class itself. And I asked students to note down whatever comes to your mind. It was related to management, management process subject. And you won't believe it. It came out all the 6 modules, all the concepts in that, how he applied in his practical projects and all. And we thoroughly, like students as well as I, enjoyed the whole thing. So that is how it went on.
Good. So I have noted the point. I'll get back to you, Dr. Shefali, Dr. Nidhi just now. Yes, Mr. Anand. Mr. Anand, please come in. Mr. Anand was Anand MB. Yeah, Mr. Anand. Yes, please come in. How have you used?
I'm taking actually PG classes for MCOM students.
Yeah.
In that one, for entrepreneurship development, I used to use a number of cases. For example, qualities of entrepreneur, in which you will take successful and unsuccessful entrepreneur, some of the small case studies. And I used to explain through case studies, and students' understanding level will be more important. Such kind of plan.
Okay, good. Thank you. Is there somebody else? Is there someone else who has raised the hand? Now see, we have received 3 important responses over here. And from these responses, yes, Dr. Suwaiba.
Yes, hi, sir. Good evening, good afternoon to everyone.
Yeah.
So, what we do for the case studies is that we also sometimes show some movie in our college,
Okay.
and management movies and all, and then we, discuss on certain aspects of the movie. So, this is
Okay.
also one way what we do a case study in our college.
All right.
I'm
Very
from
nice.
St. Xavier's College, Mumbai.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
nice.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
yes. Anything you want to share about it?
The students, sometimes look through a very different lens, and they come up with a very beautiful ideas. Like once I remember the Wolf of Wall Street was one thing what we played, not the entire thing, but a small concept. Then there was a corporate movie as well, which we had discussed. So, the very different aspects, like what they see, which even we would not imagine as to, they can think up to that level. And the students here with Xavier's are like very classy, and their knowledge and everything is too experiential. So it really helps in even understanding certain concepts in a way. Even we start learning with them. So this is a very nice way. Even role play sometimes we do in class, so which helps to gain the knowledge and also to understand their perspective as a student.
Okay, good. Now, please see, whatever short discussion we had 4 persons coming up here, and they have shared their views. And about case study method, they have given general idea. Yes, Dr. M. Muhammad Siddiq, you want to say something?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. Please come in.
Actually, I handle company law and secretarial practice paper for my BCom students.
Okay.
I won't say usually always about Wall Street.
Yeah.
I used to give merger, acquisition, and sick company, how actually what are the grounds they have lost. And this situation I explain. Perhaps if you are a board of director or secretary of the company, how will you handle the situation? Usually I give. I think it is related to case study.
Yes, very nice.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Now you see, ladies and gentlemen, here we had 4 persons who have been using case study method in different ways, and a few points have emerged out of their experience. And a few things have come. Number 1 that has emerged is that it is enjoyable. Number 2, it brings out the perspective of the student. Number 3 is that we give some questions and the students think about it. We can understand what the students are thinking about it. Now, these are the 3 points that have emerged in this discussion. Case study. I hope I am right on this, my dear friends.
Sir, can I, sir?
Yeah, please.
Sir, can I explain? Hello, sir. I'm Dr. Pundram from Tamil Nadu.
What is your name, sir?
Can I explain my experience, sir?
Yes. What is your
Dr.
name?
Pundram from
What is
Tamil
your
Nadu
name?
Government Arts College. My name is Dr. Pundram.
Okay.
My name is Dr. Pundram.
Okay. Go on.
I share my experience, sir. If you give the permission to me.
Yes.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir. Please go on.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So I have a nice experience in my classes. In the case study, it is a caveat emptor. In the marketing case study, really is a participatory approach method. This is a case study method. Is the teaching method of teaching is a really is wonderful result we will gain. The case study, what means in the caveat emptor, the people those who are buying, they should have the knowledge, going to buy the things. If you have the rights, our customer rights have the rights to through the caveat emptor. This I throw to the classroom the last week. Even the last town card student also is understand very well.
Good.
So in 1956 Act, very much effect in India, but people is not understand that means through the case study, the teaching is very easy to reach the poor student also. This is my experience.
Good, sir. Good. So basically, I would say, Surek, yes, this is the last point I'm taking now. Mr. Surek, Mr. Suresh, please come in, Mr. Suresh. You raise your hand. Okay, all right. Now let me continue. Now, a few points have emerged, dear friends, from our discussion here. And let us develop some perspective on the basis of this. The point that is made is, number one, it becomes case studies interesting. Number two, what our last speaker spoke, 89350438307. This is what I see as the introduction, as the name of the person. So this person says that the last person sitting on the bench is also able to understand. We are able to reach. And enjoyable. Now, my dear friends, one thing, let us be clear on one point. That case study method is an outcome, but it is not the objective. Objective is not to make it interesting. Objective is not to reach the last person sitting on the desk. Basically, the purpose of case study method is to shift the focus from the teacher to the student. This is the first thing. We call it discussion method of teaching, my dear friends. Now here, at the center of the analysis will not be the teacher. At the center of the analysis will be the student. And the role of the teacher has to become minimal, and role of the teacher has to become the role of a facilitator. Now, there are various ways in which we can proceed in this direction. Now, what is the role of the teacher in facilitating the discussion? In facilitating the discussion, two things are very important. Number one thing is, we will say art of questioning. You present the idea to the student and or to the students. And when you present the idea to the students, then let them come out with what their analysis of the subject is. Now here, one of the speakers said one thing, that we get students who are very intelligent. I think at St. Xavier's, the name of that teacher was, the person perhaps is from St. Xavier's, that we are very well-informed students. Now, this is a very important point about the case study, my dear friends. The case study method assumes a greater degree of maturity on the part of the students and greater degree of information with the students. Okay. Now, for example, this Renuga R is saying that I think case study method is a participatory approach of teaching. No. Dr. Surjit is saying that it is a participatory approach to teaching. We provide the opportunity to students to speak their minds. Sir, little modification to your idea. Case study method is undoubtedly participatory, but we would not say that it is limited to participatory. The method is basically oriented towards organizing a discussion so that the concept and the application of the concept.
My Didi will always think.
Please mute yourself. Lata's iPhone, please mute yourself. Thank you. Basic thing is, let us understand, undoubtedly it is participatory, but let us look at the focus. Focus is that let the discussion be directed. Now, my focus on the word is it should be directed in the direction of, number one, building the concept, and number two, it should be directed towards grasping the application. And number 3, the case study method is that analysis of different people, not perspective. It is not the perspective that is important. It is the analysis. The focus is not on the viewpoint. The focus, my dear friends, has to be upon the analysis. What are the types of analysis? By this, I mean to say, when different perspectives come to the class, we are not interested in opinions. Actually, what we are interested in is how opinions are actually built. What is the logic behind building up those logic? That is why we say here that the discussion method is actually a process in which the questions that the teachers make, those questions are become very, very important. Now, what are the type of questions that you can ask when you are following the case study method? Undoubtedly, one thing is there is an assumption. Assumption is that the students who are being given the cases, they are matured students and that they have done their homework seriously. If the homework has not been done seriously by the students, then the case study method will not be successful, except that it will be a good decision. The basic focus of the case study method has to be, my dear friends, that we are able to arrive at, number 1, nuances of the concept. And number 2, we have to arrive at the analytical processes and applications of the concept. Now, this focus the teacher has to keep in her mind. And when the teacher does it, then how can teacher do it? Now, in this regard, teacher has to master, while taking up the case study method, the type of questions that teacher is asking and where to use those questions. Now, we can say that there can be as many as 9 type of questions that you can ask. Dear friend, 9 or 10 type of questions that you can ask. For example, question number 1, that can be an open-ended question. For example, now here, the open-ended questions that you ask, like for example, you can say, what are your, say for example, you are teaching a strategy, or say you are teaching HRM practices, or say you are teaching marketing or marketing strategy. So what could be the open-ended question? Say for example, you have given the case of, say, General Motors company. So you can simply say, open-ended question, what are your reactions to General Motors case? What are the aspects of this problem which interests you? Now, these are open-ended questions. You can answer in any direction that you want. Now here, another type of question, second, and I'll come to a small study right now. After this, for your reading, I'll just take a minute. There are diagnostic questions, my dear friends. Second type of questions you can ask is diagnostic questions. Now, in the diagnostic questions are actually asked for the purposes of bringing out the analytical thought processes of the students, the basis on which a particular comment or the reaction is being made. For example, one person just now made a statement, and that statement was that we discussed the lecture of Metro Man in the classroom, and all management processes came into being, all aspects of management came into being. Could this teacher please come online if she's around here? I've forgotten the name. The teacher who used the Metro Man case in the class. Could the teacher please come online here? She's not around.
I think it was
Muted again.
Dr. Suwaiba.
Dr. Suwaiba. Was she muted? I did not note down.
Yeah, either it was Dr. Nidhi Arora or it was Dr. Suwaiba, because yeah.
Nidhi, are you here? Dr. Nidhi is not here. No, I think she's not here. Dr. Nidhi, are you here? Dr. Nidhi.
Prashant, I think they've been given the rights now.
Achha, okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Dr. Nidhi, you had used that lecture, Metro Man's case in your class? Dr. Nidhi? Please unmute yourself. Please unmute. Yeah, yeah.
No, going not traffic police. I don't need the traffic police.
Dr. Nidhi, did you use this? Please unmute yourself.
Sir, if you don't mind, this is Dr. Swaiba
Achha,
again.
okay, fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sir, I would like to share my experience. What we do is sometimes in the reference book like marketing, Philip Kotler and all. So
Just
there are case studies.
Let me stop you, Dr. Swaiba.
Yeah.
You use the case of Metro Man in your class. You give the example.
Yeah.
Okay. Now my question to you, specific. You said at the time that we arrived at all the management processes we discussed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody enjoyed, you and a student. This is what you said. Now, how did you arrive at that discussion? How did you make this statement to me that you could discuss all management processes? Could you recall what exactly happened in the class?
Sir, I spoke about the movies what we had shown to the students.
Exactly.
And so what we do is generally we tell the students that, you know, we will be taking up a case study, say on like example, I'll give you like Starbucks or Cafe Coffee Day, like Cafe Coffee Day recently, like it was shut. So we generally what we do is we share with the students the details. We show them some videos on those things, and then we give them some time, say 10 minutes, like what have you gathered out of this? So then they come up, okay, what were the reasons why Cafe Coffee Day example has shut? So there were the reasons like pricing, there was the reason of promotion, there was the reason, like we generally look from the marketing point of view. I teach marketing and HRM to my TY students. So generally, yeah. So,
good, Dr.
so
Swaiba. Yes, yes, good. Please keep yourself unmuted for some time.
Yeah, sure.
I'll get back to you. Now, please see, you know, the question Dr. Swaiba just now said. He said we show them a clip. And once we show them the clip, there is some background noise. When we show them the clip, then we ask them to give them some time, and then they come out with their own ideas. Now, dear friends, Dr. Swaiba will forgive me for making this statement. Actually, making this kind of statement to the students when we are giving the case study, a film or whatever, unless we provide the context in which we are giving that, it is incomplete. First and foremost is that we have to provide a detailed context, because the objective is twofold. Objective is, number one, to give them the concept and also to give them the application in such a manner that their analytical, critical abilities are utilized to the maximum. Now, when we present a case study or we show them a film or we give them a story, then at that time, it is very necessary that a student come prepared with the aspects of what we will call, in theory we say We may use the word with the students or we may not use with the word with the students. But as teachers, we should know that we have to give them the theoretical context. That they have to analyze within that context. Because if the context is not there, then the analysis will be analysis of views and opinions rather than of the learned views and opinions. So the first and foremost thing is that we provide them the appropriate context for any analysis. Now, for example, suppose you are teaching them, now you are teaching marketing, and within marketing, there must be a topic. Within HR, there must be a topic. Within finance, there is a topic. Within accounting, there is a topic. And for each topic, please keep in mind, when you use the case study method or the discussion method, you should be clear about, number one, the learning outcomes. And this particular method is considered more difficult. It is undoubtedly enjoyable. But the matter should not remain confined merely to enjoyment. The first thing is that when you go to the lecture in a case study method, you must specify the learning outcomes. And those learning outcomes should be written in the form of a verb. By verb, I mean that a student after the class, the student will be able to, now fill in the blanks. The student will be able to say explain. The student will be able to define. A student will be able to provide solution to. A student will be able to calculate. A student will be able to analyze. Like this, your specific learning outcomes should be specified when we take up the case study method. If we are going to the classroom without specifying the learning outcomes and without trying to achieve those learning outcomes, then it will be a mere time pass. It will be an enjoyable time pass. A student will be able to express the attitude. A student will be sensitized. Now, these are some of the learning outcomes that you have to specify. So that when we use the case study method, my dear friends, the first step in that direction is that when you make a choice, of this particular method, then learning outcomes must be specified by you for yourselves and as well as for the classroom. Now, this is 893504383307. This is the username of the person. Name is not written here. Case method, this person comments. This is for the class. Go to the chat box and you can read it. Case method is easy to teach students in the understanding of concepts. And the way to teach the goal is the analytical point. Yes, you are correct. But you are correct only partially. Reason is, it is easy to teach the student in understanding the concept. Don't say it is easy to teach. This method is self-learning method. Understand this also. After you have specified the learning outcomes that are given, you should be able to, my dear friends, specify. You should be able to understand this, that here the focus is not on teaching. The focus is on self-learning, because self-learning is the best learning. And different views, different ways. Now, for example, you are teaching case study method in accounting, for example. Now, in this particular case, in the case of accounting or in the case of finance, sometimes solutions are the same. In most other cases, in case of marketing, solution may not be the same. You may not arrive at the same solution every time in the classroom. You may not even arrive at consensus in the classroom. That is possible. But understanding is there. Applications are there. And third very important thing, self-learning, and can we focus on skill part of it? Can we focus on the skill dimension, particularly when the cases are there in the field of finance? For example, when we are teaching, say IRR method, internal rate of return method for say in financial management. So every problem that you will give them, solution will be the same. Sometimes it is so precise. So this is the third aspect. Can we talk of the skill part of it? So now again, coming back, my dear friends, when we are trying to find the analytical, we want to induce the self-learning part of this part of the discussion. In that case, these are the diagnostic questions that will help the students to the maximum extent. And the third thing, here, the questions are information-seeking questions. The third type of questions that you can use in your case study method is what we will call information-seeking. What kind of information? For example, Dr. Swaiba, I just now asked her, I sought information from you. What exactly are you doing? How are you arriving at the concept? Now, these are the kind of things her mind will have to now analyze. How exactly is she making use of the film that she is presenting to the students? An idea definitely is not entertainment. Entertainment could be a result of the case study. Let me tell you this. And please, the third important thing here is the questions are, and these are difficult to handle questions. Questions which challenge you, which challenge the student, the challenge questions. Now, this is a very important point. In challenge questions, normally what we do is we ask questions like, why do you believe? Now, for example, here, for example, 89355048348347. The participant number this is saying here that it is an easy to teach method. Now I can ask him a question. Is it really easy to teach? Is it really easy? Now, if I ask this question, this is a challenge question. You are challenging the premise and the perspective of your student in that case. I hope I am making this particular point clear to you. The fourth type of questions are in the case study here. Now, Dr. Swaiba, will you please come on the screen again? Can you unmute yourself? I want to ask you a question. Dr. Swaiba. Yes, Dr. Swaiba.
Yes,
Answer
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Answer
Yes, sir. So it is not easy. It is very challenging. You know why? Because when the students are having a very different point of view sometimes,
Yes.
so it is, you know, very difficult to cope up with their understanding and with their perspective. I find it very challenging, to be very honest.
Yes, it is.
And a new concept altogether sometimes, you know, arises on certain discussions, you know, which I may have not even thought of. Like,
Yes.
example, I'll give you on marketing. I first finished with my portion that was like, you know, marketing mix. I explained them 4 types of P's, then 7 types of P's, then the new P's, 2 extra, everything I explained them. Then we came up with this concept of Starbucks and Cafe Coffee Day. In fact, we also have the continuous evaluation in our college. So we also give them case study for the assignment. So
Okay.
I find a different variety of answers what they give, you know, even in those written assignments and also orally, verbally when we discuss. Sometimes the lecture time becomes very short, you know, with what concept they come all together, which we may have not even heard. Like, this is just a small example. Sometimes they'll take up Parle-G, they'll take up Amul as the, you know, cooperative society. So, you know, those examples, what they come up is sometimes, you know, I find that, okay, I don't have that much of knowledge, you know, sometimes I fail in there because we are into that research. and they come up with, different names, different ideas altogether.
Excellent. Excellent. This is like a very good teacher. You are on the right track, Dr. Suwaiba.
So in a way, it's like a learning thing to
Very
me
nice.
as well. So.
Very nice. My question to you, I'll come to Dr. Nidhi in a short while. Dr. Suwaiba, one question you answer. On what basis do you select your case studies? On what basis do you select the scripts, the films that you suggest? Then, yes, please tell me. Yes. What is the basis on which you select the case studies or the films to be screened? Okay, Dr. Nidhi, are you here?
Yes. Yeah, I was not able to unmute myself. Sorry for that. So basically what we do is we see the problems, what we see in a particular concept, conceptual things, what are the issues, what are the challenges. And accordingly, then we select a certain movie or a certain clip altogether. So on the challenges, on the objectives of a particular.
Got it.
Yeah.
That means we have to have a specific question in our mind.
Yes.
Before we select a case, right? So
Yes.
This is one. And here, Lavit DS is asking a question. Drawing conclusions from a particular case study is left to the perception of the reader. Please understand one thing. Dr. Lavit, it is not the perception which is important. Understand one thing. Three things have to be very clear when you use the case study. Number one, the concept that you are going to teach. Number two, the application of it. And number three, your learning outcomes. And your learning outcomes is not in the form of a perception. It is in the form of analytical, critical understanding of the underlying phenomenon or the underlying subject. This we have to understand. We cannot say, my dear friends, yes, there are two contradictory things I want to state here. One thing is that there is no perfect solution to the case study. Every group may arrive at different solution. Understood. But it should not be a matter of perception. It should be a matter of appropriate analysis in the light of learning outcomes, my friends. If the teacher or the facilitator in the classroom loses sight of the perspective, loses sight of the learning outcomes, then the goal of the case study will not be achieved. Then it will be that some people are giving their views, opinions, and we call that views and opinions are summarized. And summary of views and opinions becomes the teaching of management. No, that is wrong. We have to keep in, before the teacher goes to the classroom, the teacher must have in mind, again I'm repeating, I'm hammering this again and again, the learning outcomes. And I stated earlier also that your learning outcomes must be in the form of verbs. Verbs in the sense what the student should be able to do after the class has been completed. Now here there is a response from Dr. Sujit Kumar who says, we are all the participants are very fortunate to have you as a resource. No. I would personally like to listen to you many more times. No. You let us understand every concept. Thank you very much for the compliment. I thought this was a question, Dr. Sujit. I would welcome that you please put your questions in the chat box rather than anything else. Okay. Now coming to Dr. Nidhi. Dr. Nidhi, can you come online, please? Dr. Nidhi.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Good evening. Yes, Dr. Nidhi, you had raised your hand to say something.
Yeah. Sorry, that time I was trying to connect, but I couldn't.
No problem.
So I think the same thing, should I speak about that Metro Man you were asking about, or should I?
Yeah. Go on.
Yes, sir. So that's what, as we were talking about, since after finishing the syllabus only, I played that the entire lecture of 1 hour. And what we found is that in the process, we learned 5 M's, then input, output, and the processing, what is happening in the whole project. And then we always talk about the structure of the organization and how it leads to the structure, this culture of the organization. All these points, students, actually, we were doing the revision and they were having all these concepts in their mind very clear.
Okay.
So it was not from the examination point of view, it was from the practical point of view. And what they had, we all were listening that lecture and we were making our own notes. And then we discussed and we just entire thing we have framed together, like input, process, output, and then leadership also came into that. Servant leadership also came into that. So the different perspectives like that only, it's exploratory. Yes, as you were saying, that setting the context was in the management process point of view. And I know that is very much important to set the context and all. So that's how it went on actually.
Good, very good. Now, another point, now one more point has been raised by Dr. Nidhi here. She made a statement as a casual statement, but a very important statement that it was not from the point of view of examination. Now here, my dear friends, one question that arises very often in case of the case study method is, we call it the question relating to how to evaluate the students. How do we go about it? That becomes an issue. So very often what happens that in the kind of teaching learning system that we have in our universities and colleges, we have a written examination also at the end. Yes, it is there. But there has to be an evaluation on the basis of what the student has done as far as the case is concerned. Like, for example, somebody said that cases are given as a matter of, what you would say, as a matter of assignments also. And based on the assignments, we try to arrive at the evaluation of the students. Now here, my dear friends, I would suggest one thing. When we are doing the case analysis or when we are giving the thing, then at that time, we will like to profile the students. Now, this is a thing which we often do not do. For example, what kind of profiles that we prepare? Say, for example, one student, I would say like this. I would normally define, what I do is that I divide the profile of the students into 4 parts. Part number 1, I'll come to Mr. Shivkumar to your question just now. Let me explain this particular point. That we need to profile our students when we are doing the case study method. What I do is that I write the names of the students. I write the content of the analysis, content of the presentation of the student, second column. In third one, I write the process. And in fourth one, I write the frequency. For example, say I give a case study to a student. Say name is say Vinod Kumar. Then what type of a student is he? Is he I would put it like this, say strengthening a student. Does he strengthen the class? Does he work alone? Is he infrequent? Is he frequent? Is he infrequent? Does he try to disrupt? We call him dysfunctional expert. Does he is he an organized participant? Now, these are the qualities, these are the adjectives I write for them on the basis of my understanding of those students. All right. Is he well-prepared student? I write that also. You can make out whether the student is well-prepared or not. So, strengthening student, well-prepared student, a frequent, low-quality student, that the student will definitely come up, he will raise his hand on everything, but the contribution will be very, very poor. We know these students. And for each class, it is not that I will stereotype the student every time. No. I would try to make this analysis for each class while evaluating. Thirdly, strategic participant. These are the students who are there They have very good content, but these strategic participants are such that they derive their content from the previous discussion or discussion of others. So let me just explain one case, for example. One student, Vinod Kumar. I would write, say, I have written strengthening participant. His content is strengthening undoubtedly. Naive initially or superficial initially, but becomes substantial later on. Such a student, I would say, strengthening student. What is the process? That this student selects his questions or ideas very, very carefully. His response is very well organized. And what is his frequency? Is it low frequency of participation or high frequency of participation? Or the frequency is low in the beginning or high at the end? This is one type of profile. Let me give you another example. Say another student, say his name is Anand. Frequent, low quality participant. That is the profile I write in my notes. And his content, little substance. Fails to support the assumptions. This is the second part of his profile. What is the process that he follows? Listens to others carefully, but repeats what others are saying in different ways, makes no useful contribution. And his frequency, low, high, medium, I would write that. And in my class, from where I've taken it, I found that this person's frequency was higher. Another student, third one. Say the name of that student is Rohit. I would say the student is infrequent participation. Quality varies from content. Content, as far as content is concerned, his quality varies from significant comment to excellent discussion. And does not provide data. Process. What is the process through which he is arriving? Does he arrive at the substantial confirmation with data or merely perception? And what is his frequency? Low, high, whatever. Another student. Say the name is Scott. I call him, say, strategic student. Good content, but always derived from earlier in the discussion. Offers, now what is the process? Offers excellent summaries. However, only summaries, and always say, this student I've written always late to the class. And frequency is adequate. Now, there is another student. Say, name is Kalicharan, a very well prepared student. What is the content? Content is excellent. Challenges the topics, challenges the issues, is knowledgeable, thoughtful. What is the process? Careful listener, follows flow of discussion, articulates, well organized, appropriate contribution. Frequency is moderate, but fine. Now, this is another profile of a student. Another student, a dysfunctional person, always disrupts. And I have written for him, dysfunctional expert. And accurate. His content is accurate, but it is hidden behind jargon. He uses some words and phrases which are difficult to comprehend sometimes, which are unusual, but process is poor. Answers questions which are not appropriate for his knowledge or for his expropriate, and frequency is high. Like this, I would keep doing in my classroom. So this is one way. Dear friends, there are 4 things that you should keep in mind. Name of the student and how you describe the student. What is the content or quality of content of the student? What is the process that the student is following? And what is the frequency of participation? So we have Dr. Swaiba once again raising her hand. Yes, Dr. Swaiba, come in. You want to say something?
Exactly, sir. Like the way you explained was really nice, and we need to really understand the the concept, and then go for a discussion. This really helps both ways. The student also gives more clarity, and even the teacher also gets more clarity after doing that.
Yes, very good.
Agreed, sir.
And the point is profiling the student appropriately.
Yes.
As you know, Dr. Nidhi Arora has very clearly said, sometimes it is not part of the, it was not in the examination. We just did it. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, Dr. Renuga, there are two questions that have come here. 2-3 questions have come. One question has come from Mr. Shiv Kumar here. Our questions are just like what is meant by, not application based. How can we achieve our high objective of education? Shiv Kumar, ACMA. Yes, Mr. Shiv Kumar, the question is that if you provide the context to the student, number one, and you have to make the student think in the light of what your learning outcomes are. And Dr. Renuga says that is it enough to give an hour to give their ideas? I think assignment is good. Am I right? You can follow Dr. Renuga anything that you want. If you want to give them assignment, yes, you can. But in the classroom, the point is, my dear friends, that very often what happens in the discussion in the classroom, that we have to lose control also. Lose control. But at the same time, keeping the discussion, this is contradictory, but keeping the discussion in the right direction. So one thing that is best is, as I said in the beginning, that this method assumes higher maturity on the part of the students. That is, the case is given to the student and the students come prepared within that particular concept in terms of their responses. That is what is required. And you are saying, Dr. Renuga, is 1 hour enough? I think if the purpose is twofold, that you want to evaluate the student, number one, and number two, you want to achieve your learning outcomes, then I think 1 hour or 1.5 hours should be enough. And of course, it will depend on the length of the case, how long your case study is. If your case study is too long, too big, runs into say 20 pages, then 1 hour may not be enough. So that is very important. And one more thing should be there, that students should understand while doing the case study that they are being evaluated while they are making the counter contribution. It is not, please see this, it is a fun, it is enjoyment, but it is not enjoyment for its own sake. It has to be enjoyment with a purpose. The pedagogy is enjoyable, but enjoyment is not the goal. Enjoyment is to arrive at the concept. For example, there was one case study I used to use for the purposes of teaching options, financial in finance. And that was a case study regarding a bank. And that case study ran into something like 25 to 30 pages. And in that case study, there were some very important questions and issues which were involved, and teaching a very technical concept like call options, put options, and of course, the different type of options that were there. Also futures, all those were involved. So in that particular case, the discussion would take place for a period of 3 hours. And we were arriving at the concept of what it is and how to make use of options. So we would start from the meaning of option in the beginning and go up to application of the option within 3 hours time. So that was the purpose of the class. But at that time, every student knew that they were being evaluated. They could not depend, their evaluation could not be based on what they will learn from others right in the classroom. And we can make out in the classroom, my dear friends, whether a student has come well prepared or the student is only playing a game in the classroom. My opinion is that it is a pedagogical tool. Just as teaching is a tool, lecturing is a tool, so the case is also a tool. And it will definitely, how much time you will take will definitely depend on, number one, the length of the case, number of points you want to cover. Now, in one case study, I'll show you, I'll just show you a story. Just a minute. Let me share my screen. Here it is. This is a story, Black Sheep family story. I used it for ethics case. Look at the length of the case. It is only 974 words. This is the one. And 4 sessions of 1 hour, 30 minutes was used only for the discussion of this. This was used by me in a management development program. And in this case, in this particular story, what I had done was, in this story, there is nothing. There is a farm, life on a farm. In that farm, an unexpected birth takes place of a black sheep. As a result of that, a large number of rumors go around the pasture. Look at this. As I'm highlighting this, a black sheep was born. Everybody was white, but this was black. Okay? The entire pasture was in the shock. Mr. and Mrs. Sheep were beside themselves. All right? They never imagined that such a thing could happen to them. Many rumors went around the pasture. Now look at the case. It is very interesting. It even said that Mrs. Sheep had a black sheep in her past. The barnyard friends would wander over to get a look at the new arrival and just shake their heads. Poor sheep family, what are they going to do? The horses and mules said, as they extended a hoof in support. Some of the other farm animals were very unkind. What a disgrace. The pigs said, as they wallowed the mud, would quickly spread throughout the barnyard. Even neighboring farms heard about the black sheep in the family and spread nasty rumors about this good sheep family. Life became much harder than it was before the sheep family. Now please see, look at this small case. This is the story I had shared. I just wanted to show you. Only 974 words. And we discussed it for as much as 6 hours. All aspects of the ethics that run within the organization, those were discussed. Diversity was discussed. My learning outcomes were very clear. My learning outcome was, in this particular case study, to sensitize people to inclusivity, to disability, to matter of caste, to matter of religion, to matter of what is not according to our value system, our condition. Now, this was the story. And we used it very successfully. Now, in this, basically, we made use of, as I said just now to you, the kind of questions that you use, they become very important. What are your diagnostic questions? Now, you want people to talk. Now, in this particular case, I never wanted to talk about caste. I did not want to talk as a teacher, but I wanted my students to, my participants to come, my students to come up with the issue of caste. Black sheep, how it should be brought about. Or about disability, blind people, the people with ability of not being able to move clearly, not having the architecture of building which is according to the disabled people. Now, those are the questions we wanted to discuss with this particular story, where in this particular story is very simple, that there is a barnyard. In that barnyard, a large number of animals live. And in that barnyard, there is a family which has only white color of sheep. And this family gives birth to a black sheep. And everybody starts talking, good things as well as bad things. Some people even question the character of the lady sheep who had given birth to a black sheep. and so on. And what happens when this sheep grows up? What thoughts does this sheep grow up with? How this sheep then makes her place or his place? What is the status of this sheep as she grows up? And what is the reaction of the society towards accommodating the black sheep when she was young, when she was old, and when she was working, when she was useful, when she was not useful, and so on. So now the point, my dear friends, is that under such circumstances, the action questions, they play a very important. I've given you different type of questions that we ask. I told you about open-ended questions, diagnostic questions, information-seeking questions, challenge questions, and action questions. What needs to be done? Now, in a story like this, in a case study like this, when you present a story like this to the students, you ask them one question: what needs to be done? Now, what needs to be done at the level of school, at the level of workplace, at the level of family, at the level of neighborhood, and so on. And the moment you put this question, what needs to be done when society is acting like this, behaving like this, for a certain person who is considered black sheep, someone who is out of place, what do you do? Now, in such cases, dear friends, a lot of new ideas start emerging. And it is at that time that you should take a backpack seat as a teacher. Let the floor be with the students. Let they be in command. And you keep reminding people without analyzing what they are trying to say. All right? And at that time, sometimes some irrelevant thing may come up. Sometimes things may come up in the discussion which are disruptive. So you set the priority questions which set priority. For example, you can say, give the limited resources. Given the limited resources, given the mental makeup of the people, what should be our priorities? And you bring the discussion back within control. So priority and sequence questions are another type. So let me repeat what I said just now. You should know how to make use of open-ended questions, diagnostic questions, information-seeking questions, challenge questions, action questions, and questions on priority. And yes, we call it, another type of questions are hypothetical questions. Now, this is where you can make the students extend their thought process beyond the subject at hand. Hypothetical question: what would have happened if, like this, question starting like this: what would have happened if this had not happened? So these are the questions where you can direct the discussion to situations which are not mentioned in the case, or where you want to build up on something beyond the context that you have defined for the students. So this is another, and one of the most important questions, you can call them extension questions, questions of extension, where we ask the students for the implications, of the conclusions. What are the implications? And finally, the generalizations, questions on generalizations based on your study. For example, based on your study of whatever subject is at hand. What are your general conclusions? So, my dear friends, these are some of the questions that need to be asked as far as case study method is concerned. This is one. Now, while discussing the cases, the speakers who spoke here, particularly Dr. Swaiba and Dr. Nidhi, they made some very relevant points. That Dr. Swaiba was very frank in saying that sometimes we do not know, sir, how to respond. Now here, when we are throwing the discussion for completely open, then at that time, when we are asking questions of different types, then we are putting our participant or the student at a high risk in terms of self-esteem or peer relationships. It's a very important point. When the case is going on and you ask a question and you ask a challenging question, the questions can affect the self-esteem of your participant. By self-esteem, I mean the evaluation by the student of himself, how they evaluate themselves. That is one. And number two, they are thinking about the peer relationships. Sometimes unknowingly, we can make the student fight. So we have to be careful about it. This is one caveat. Number two, second thing is, you must ask a question yourself. When asking a question, will my response, my question, balance the needs of the individual student and the wider group? Now, please notice this. You have to strike a balance between the needs of a student when the discussion is going on and the wider group. Those two things, that balance has to be struck. You should not get caught by only one student or a few students. This becomes difficult. But this is one important point that you have to keep in mind. You have to keep the focus of the attention of all the students in the classroom and do not let the discussion be hijacked or taken over by only one or two students. Thirdly, ask a question to yourself. Will my response, will the teacher's response stretch the group's knowledge of the subject material, or it will, now notice what happens sometimes, say a particular student makes a point in the class. Now when you make and that point, you may not agree with that particular point. You may not like to extend that particular point beyond a certain level. So at that particular point, you have to ask yourself quickly that your response should actually be such that it should increase the knowledge or stretch the knowledge of the students rather than completely uproot the thought process of the student. You should be able to give them an honorable retreat. I hope I'm able to make my point clear. Honorable retreat, so that they can, okay sir, fine, I will rethink. So this is one important point which we teachers often forget while discussing this. So always allow us to give the space to the student to revise the position, to retreat, rather than say that no, you are absolutely wrong, completely wrong. Third point, very important, last point, you can say, this is that you ask yourself a question, will my response fit the norms of the learning community? Will it fit their norms, or it will not fit the norms? of the student or of the community. If it does not fit the norms of the community, then it is better to not to make such a response. For example, now I'll tell you, I don't know if I have shared this particular idea here in the class or I have not in my previous lectures. In my classroom, we once had a discussion, had a case, which was on what is this LBGTQ? No, this community, where you have queers, where you have lesbians, where you have homosexuals and others, bisexuals and so on, gays and etc., LGBTQ. In this particular class, when the class ended, everybody had their participation. One student stood up in the class and said, "Sir, I am queer. I never showed it to anybody, but for the first time, I'm saying that I'm queer in the classroom." Now, there was pin drop silence in the class at that particular moment. We never had though we had discussion on LGBTQ, but the discussion was that nobody was member of the class. And we discussed it like that. But the moment one student said that I am a queer and I'm different, I just asked him a question or her a question. That person posed as a girl. I asked that first person a question. Why did you choose to disclose your identity today and not before? Now, this was a question which was not open-ended question. It was information-seeking question. And I asked this question, information-seeking question, because now asking this question was not against the norms of the class. The norms of the class had got redefined because of the discussion of the case which were dealing with LGBTQ. And everybody was openly talking about it. And everybody was talking that it should be accepted if the people are different, if they are not just males and female, then whatever their position is on this matter, that should be accepted and respected by others. The norm had changed. Since the norm had changed, therefore this girl had the guts to disclose the identity, her gender identity, which this student had not done for the last 2.5 years, because this student was in final year of the 3-year course. And similarly, I could not have asked such a direct question, information-seeking question. Why did you choose to disclose that you are this? Or are you this? Now, therefore, whenever you are asking questions in the classroom in the case study, my dear friends, keep in mind what are the norms and the values that your group carries. Because the student learning contract or student learning relationship, student learning environment will get completely disturbed as a result of this. Issues of religion, for example, have to be brought up with very, very, very great care, because they are likely to be misinterpreted. Okay, so these are some of the things that happen. Okay, that can happen. So these are some of the issues, my dear friends. I wanted to say the basic objective of mine of this particular lecture of 1.5 hours or so was to highlight 4 points. Point number 1 was that when we discussed 4 or 5 points, I would say. Point number 1 was that in this particular method, the teacher takes a backseat. It is the student who has to learn, and we assume that there is higher degree of maturity as far as students are concerned. Number 2, discuss the case studies must be in the context of concept. And number 2, you should always keep in mind or specify the learning outcomes in terms of verbs, in terms of actioning. Thirdly, be careful about making use of a large number, the type of questions you should ask in the class, in the case study, while leading the discussion. These questions, as I said, can be of several types, like open-ended questions, diagnostic questions, information-seeking questions, challenge questions, action questions, questions which determine the priority of the discussion, questions of extension, where you ask implications, and questions of generalization. Apart from that, the last point that I have said, that be careful about the kind of responses that you make in the class. The responses should be, take care while making your response that you do not, that the responses regarding the self-esteem and peer relationships. Number two, you should balance while making your responses the needs of the individual students who is participating in the discussion and the wider group. Okay, then you should have to keep in mind that the response that you make, that should only extend and stretch the knowledge on the subject. And you should be able to provide an honorable retreat to the participants. And finally, your response must always fit the norms and values of the group. Otherwise, there can be serious disruptions. So these are some of the aspects that we have to keep in mind while making use of the discussion case method as the teaching tool or as a pedagogical tool. This is all, dear friends, that I had to discuss. Mr. Prashant Singh is a co-host, now. We want to ask something. All right. If you have any questions, you can please ask. You can write in the chat box, or you can just ask me by unmuting.
So there is this one question from Balaji in which he is asking that in today's concept, I think the word is of kinesthetic learners learn by making them get involved. Am I right, sir? So
yes. Yes, I entirely agree. That basically what you are saying is that making them get involved. The best learning is self-learning, Mr. Balaji. And self-learning cannot take place unless you are really involved in the process. In the case method, we hand over the material before the class, along with the learning outcomes. They study the case, and then they start thinking about the case. They start finding out the solutions in the light of the learning objectives of the class. And when they come to the classroom, obviously, their entire thought process of the concept as well as application comes to the fore. And you as teacher bring the whole thing at one place. And yes, the objective of getting involved in the subject is truly achieved. Yes, I entirely agree with you, Mr. Bhatt. Yes, please.
So I think this is the only question.
Okay.
Which hasn't been answered.
All right.
Okay, so at this particular moment, now I would like to present the formal vote of thanks. Okay, so a very good evening to everyone. On behalf of the organizing team, it's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks for this final session of 2-week refresher course. I wholeheartedly thanks to Professor C.S. Sarma and for such an insightful session. I'm sure all the participants gained a lot. Thank you so much, sir. I would also like to thank all the participants for their active participation, not only in this session, but throughout the course for making it a success. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. I think there are some responses here. Fine. No questions. There is a comment from Renuga R. After discussion in the class, we have to give assignment so that we can make all the students to participate. Because few students have ideas but hesitate to talk in the class. Low. What is your opinion? I think, yes, there are some students who do not participate or they participate less. Now you have to see their contribution. Maybe in terms of assignment, it can be there, or you have to devise some way of finding out. for these students who do not participate. But my thinking is that if you are well prepared, then participation in one form or the other does always come out. So yes, there are some students who prepare very well, but still do not participate. For such students, we have to take special care, and some method will have to be arrived at for the purposes of evaluating them appropriately. Yes, assignment could be a good way, or you can always do a viva for such students. Yes, you can do that. I hope I have answered this question of Dr. Renuga. Is that all? Chaliye, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sunita Rana. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you, sir.
Faiza. Yes, thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Okay, namaskar. Bye. Can I leave?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.